Algiers, you're welcome. For the first time in Puglia?
Definitely our first time in Puglia. Thank you for having us. It's really rad to be here.
How you feel?
It's really interesting because I told you before, when we first arrived, I had never been to this part of Italy, and it definitely has its own character and its own identity, and it feels really wonderful. I wish we could spend more time here.
I would like to start from the sound of the band, because it's a mix of different genres. There is a punk, there's a blues, avant-rock. The sound come from?
All over. We come from so many different places artistically. It's kind of where the four of us intersect. We listen to a lot of different music and are influenced by literature, film, politics, and it's really where the four of us commingle, I guess, to use a phrase that we use from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, in a band, listen to the same music or not?
Yes and no. We share some similar influences, but we obviously have our own influences that we bring to each other that influence us more. And also what's interesting with us, and like any musician or any creative person, we're influenced all the time by new music that's coming out. So we're constantly listening to new music and seeing new bands and going to small clubs and seeing a punk rock show or a techno show or anything that is interesting and vibrant and new. And I think that willingness to be open to new things helps us develop as a band. So it's not really just about our influences from the past when we were teenagers, but what we listen to now.
This is important.
Yeah, it's huge.
There is, I think, there is a political and social commitment in the band, also religious. Why? How? Very strong. Because I heard, for example, the lyrics are more interesting. Like "Walk Like a Punk," for example. So the sample of the Hampton is great.
Yeah, I think
very strong. I think
it's power. I think that's what we're trying to do, is resurrect a history that has been silenced, particularly in the United States, but around the world. People who have been oppressed, people who have been treated poorly, and the violence that sits beneath society. We try to bring that out and remind people, and we call our music, it has a haunting quality because there's a lot of ghosts in the music itself. And I think that's what also makes the music itself interesting, is because we're interested in the social dynamics of music, not just music itself from the past, but what was going on at the time these types of musics were coming about. Soul music, people always, they try to call us dystopian soul, dystopian soul, and I think that's a cool word. Dystopia, it's obviously the end of the world type of vibe, but soul music was made in a very dystopian environment for black people. It was made in an environment of segregation, of violence, so that's dystopian in itself. Yeah. So soul has its roots, just like gospel does, in a very violent world, and I think we just try to pull that out and combine it with other types of music.
I think it's not just a normal band, because the music is great, but the message is very strong, very important. It's different.
Yeah, it is different. It is. We had a concept. We had the concept of the band before we had the music.
Okay.
So the actual idea, some of the things that we wanted to address, was there before the band came about, and the music actually helped us articulate some of those ideas.
You are a serious band?
Like, as people?
Yeah.
No, not at all. We're silly. I mean, we're serious in what we do. We're committed to what we do.
We're serious about it.
Yeah.
But, like, as far as people, I feel like people are sometimes surprised when they meet us and we're making dumb jokes and just being silly and just hanging out. This is a very funny story. We were in Croatia, and we played this really cool show in Rijeka and on the coast, and the local newspaper wrote that Algiers played an amazing show, and then they closed down the party in Rijeka. So we were out with the whole community all night. So we also like to have fun.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a sense of humor as well, just about life, or otherwise. I think you get Franklin has a very recognizable laugh, and otherwise you get I think you can get pigeonholed or pinpointed in a way where it almost takes away from what we're trying to accomplish in a certain way. If you think it's just one particular idea or emotion or something like that, it's much deeper.
I saw you play in different places. Today it's a club, but you play in stadium with the Depeche Mode. I saw you play in stadium with the Depeche Mode. What changes?
I think it's dependent upon the experience, and it's dependent upon the individual. I mean, you can talk about the actual dynamics of playing in a big stadium because you have a crew, you have people who are helping you out, you have less stress and worry about actual the physical nature of performing, the electronics, making sure the power, everything works. But sometimes maybe you don't have the same energy when you perform in a big space, when you have a small club. You might be worried about everything that's going on because something's going to break in a small club, but the energy there is incredible. Like when we played in Turin, that club was so small, nobody could move. We couldn't move, the crowd couldn't move, but it was a really powerful experience because we were all together convening and communicating over this music. So,
but I think in small club you can have a contact with the people.
For sure.
It's better.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it, you feel like you're making a much more direct connection, and there's an exchange rather than you in one place and it goes out and you don't receive anything back. It actually, you get back what you put into it.
And that takes me back to being a teenager when I first experienced music, because when I first experienced music, it was in small places. It wasn't in big places, you know? And that feeling of, even when, you know, Lee and I both like this band called The Makeup from the 90s. When I first saw them in about 98, there were only like 60 people at that show at the Echo Lounge.
Mm-hmm. At the most. Every time I saw them, there were no more than that many people.
And they were awesome. And I was just, but it didn't matter how many people were there. What mattered was how powerful that performance was and how different it was.
In the album The Underside of Power, you work with Andrew Watley from the Party Shed. So I work with him like a DJ. We play just Northern Soul in a club. So unbelievable.
What did y'all play?
Northern Soul.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
really?
Northern Soul. He changed something for your music or not?
It was wonderful. He's a really kind, sweet, generous person. And he has amazing synthesizer collection. He's got every synthesizer you would want to play. And he's really generous and he shares with you. And he actually plays a lot on the record itself. So he didn't maybe necessarily shape the songs as a producer would. He more just kind of highlighted certain elements that we wanted to bring out that he could bring out. So he was more of a collaborator rather than a producer. And that really helped.
He wants to change everything or nothing? He wants to change something.
No, he didn't change anything about the songs.
No, I will say for me personally, because our record, there was a few different phases that we made it in, and he was kind of the first phase where we were laying down the foundations and kind of mapping out the songs. And before we went into that, I didn't actually know. I mean, we had demoed a little bit, but I didn't know what I was going to play on most of the songs. And I was able to spend 2 days.
Served, okay?
I was able to spend 2 days straight with him, just sitting down and just did all my guitar for pretty much the whole record. Just the last couple of days that we were in there, and that was kind of quite shaped what I was doing.
Yeah. And he's fun. He's also a really funny person.
He's funny, yeah.
And he talks a lot of shit, and I love that. And we talk a lot of shit, so it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, sure. You prefer. I think the band is a live band, but you prefer work in a studio or play live in a club? It's different, but
very different. And I think it also depends on your mood and where you are. You know, like when you've been on tour for a really long time, all you're doing is thinking about going into the studio and doing that experience. And then when you're in the studio recording, I feel like all you're thinking about is how to get this out onto the stage and do it in that. And at least for me personally, the songs don't ever really exist until you're actually playing them live. Like even and songs are like these living, breathing creatures. So in the studio, you're merely documenting a point in their lifespan, and sometimes songs can die, and you don't return to them because they just don't have whatever they originally did when it was that idea. But then there's other times where, you know, you're continually reworking songs and ideas from years ago that you may have already recorded once that you may revisit, or you may not fully understand a song or like a meaning of a song until you're actually performing it on the stage. So it's tough to give a straight answer, but maybe live for me.
Yeah, it depends.
Guys, americano? Do you want some coffee?
Coffee, I'm good, thank you.
Ok, allora sono solo per...
Thank you.
Perfect.
I would like wine, more wine,
More
and
wine,
booze,
yeah.
alcohol, get drunk before the show.
Yeah.
No, I actually like the demo phase. I like to write. Sometimes I like to write on my own. No offense to Lee or anybody else in the band, but I like that first initial creative experience. That you know that when you do it, then you share it with someone that they're going to make it better. That's an exciting experience for me. Studio can be for me particularly, and maybe for Franklin as well. It can be sometimes mundane and just kind of a repetition process. And I don't know. Obviously, because I'm a lot of the things I do are either on the synthesizer or on the bass. It's a much more rhythmic thing, so the creative explorations maybe aren't as interesting as, say, for a guitar player or someone who's singing. I don't know. Live, I love, and this is the first band I've ever played in. I've played in bands before that I've enjoyed playing live. Every other band I played in, and you can tell when I play that I'm enjoying it. Every other band I played in, I kind of struggled. I liked it, but I was also just stressed and worried, and every emotion other than joy.
Can you say something about the difference of the American crowd and Italian crowds? Maybe, I don't know.
It's hard to say. It's really dependent upon the city as well, because, you know,
that's true.
If you play in New York, it's very different than playing in Atlanta or playing in Ohio or wherever. So it's a different experience. Obviously, we all feel a much stronger connection to people in Europe and that experience of playing in Europe. It's we're obviously American, but we've traveled a lot, and we've kind of left the States behind in some senses of the word, if you understand what I'm saying. Politically speaking, it's very problematic, but also we emerged as a band who basically started in London rather than Atlanta. So even if we're from Atlanta, we started in, even though you have this stupid Brexit, you still started in Europe, you know? And so there's an affinity for us playing here, and we've toured more in Europe than we have in the U.S. So, but that being said, we've had some wonderful shows in the U.S.
And a lot of
D.C. is great. I love playing in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's interesting because it just a lot of it depends on the city. Because, you know, it's funny, D.C. historically was a city that the crowds didn't really move around that much, because no one was actually from there, so no one really knew what people there, how they danced or how they acted at shows. You know, whereas, so like when we played Kosovo last week, a lot of those people didn't regularly go to concerts, and so they just were going crazy because they thought, well, this is how you're supposed to behave at a show, you know, throwing stuff on the stage and all this stuff. And so you get these different experiences in different places, which is great. But I feel like every Italian show, though, has still been pretty generally warm reception. You know, the fans of, like, people are quite fanatical and like lively, which when you're kind of trying to create that direct connection and you're feeding off each other, that's really important for a band like us.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I play in the band Algiers. We need to do this again, because what is it? What should we say? Welcome? You're listening?
You're listening.
You're listening.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Ryan.
And this is Lee from Algiers.
And you're listening to TKO Radio.